And then there's a shop with confidence. So you have that 30 days to go search for a home. So when you find something you like, you come back to me and tell me, hey, I find a home. That rating card for 2.79 will be still to be locked down for that 130 days. So meaning that you're not going to miss that rate. Please next slide.
And sorry, just to
Yeah.
go before the next slide.
Yeah.
The reason that she's saying the 130 days to make her job easier, and the most important thing, don't shatter your dreams. Because a lot of people want the $1 million home plus. We all want it, but it's what you guys qualify for, what you can afford. That's what you need to understand. Goes back to the planning, the landing gear. If you don't have it properly, you don't know what it is, you're not only going to shatter your dreams because this is what you want to buy, but you end up going somewhere else. And then Andrew gets you to $1 million home, but he doesn't know if you can afford it. But if we give you 130 days, we understand and you understand, this is what it is. Andrew, this is my debt. From here to here, I can afford. After that, I can't. So let's help me move on. So that 130 days helps you to go buy your dream home, not any home that you just get into. That's the important one.
Thank you. Next. Yeah. So when, remember I said something, how much you can afford. So always remember that when you're buying a home, there's other expenses that's included that the bank's actually looking into. The bank and this insurance company. So we have 3 insurance in Canada. We have Genworth, CMSC, and Canada Guarantee. So
That's the new one.
yeah, so CMSC, this is if you could see this, yeah, exactly. So I gave everyone this copy. So please, this will really help you, and this will guide you step by step of buying your dream home. Okay, this tells you a lot of stuff about buying your home. So it's very, very important for those that are purchasing their dream home, as in the first-time home buyers. So CMS, we look at this is what CMS is. These people, because remember, in CMS, why we use them is because if you're putting a 5% down, okay, so you're a high ratios client, okay, but if you're putting 20% down, which we don't really need insurance to cover that mortgage, you don't need CMSC. Okay, so this is what they look at. Okay, so they look at total monthly housing costs, mortgage payment, heat, property tax, and condo fee if it's applicable, and that particular number that you're seeing right now, 32%, you cannot exceed 32%. If you go beyond that, you won't be able to qualify. With this high interest rate right now, qualifying rate, which is 5.19, it's really tough for those first-time home buyers to qualify. So this is the numbers they actually look at. Okay, and then the total payment from the mortgage, which is the 40%, that 40% cannot go above. If not, you won't be able to qualify to actually get a default insurance. So it's really tough. Sorry. Please, the next slide. And then we're also looking at saving down, so saving for your down payment. Good? Okay, sorry guys. Okay. Okay, I'm not blocking you guys. Okay, awesome. Okay, so I thought I was blocking you guys. I know. So here, so we're talking about saving for your down payment. So this is where he comes in, right? You go meet him. You tell him, hey, I'm looking to buy a home in the next 2 years, or I'm looking to buy a home in the next 1 year. I need help. I need to save that because except maybe most of you have money back home that you've saved in Nigeria, and then you wanted to bring that money here, which is fine. That means you've saved money towards that. But if you don't have it, I advise you to try to save. So that's where he comes in. He'll help you save that down payment. Please, next slide. I have to be quick. Thank you. And then, yeah, so what I said, start early, plan, and the next 1 year, I want to buy a home. If it's for you to save $1,000 from your paycheck for you to get it done. Next slide. Okay, so this is very important. Income, it's number one. How do I put it? Without this, you can't get no money. I'm being honest. You can't get money from anywhere. The B side, the A side, you can, no one is going to give you a mortgage. So this is what we bank will look at. We look at your income, employment, so standard income, employment where you're working, and then remember, if you're if you're working in a company and your salary and full time, you're qualified to buy a home. At least even though you're there for 3 months and you're full time, you can still own a home. But if you're part time, impossible. I've had a customer that just been in employment as a part time, came to me and said, I want to buy a home. And I'm like, okay, and what is your job again? And he was like, oh, I'm a PSW. How long have you been in that job? 3 months. Are you full time or part time? Part time. No, it's impossible. You are not going to get it. They won't look at you because you're a part time. So you have to be a full time. And guess what? If you're a part time, you have to be there for 2 years. Okay, 2 years, then we'll use that 2 years income to qualify that person. Please, next one. How to avoid common credit mistakes that a lot of us make because I'm part of that. I remember when I came here, I was new, I didn't know anything about credit. You know, I got a credit card from different banks and I was just spending the money, buying shoes, you know, buying whatever I want. I was like, thank God, because you know, back home no one's give you credit. But here, oh my God, you could actually get like $20,000 credit card and you know, you can, oh my God, you could actually travel the whole world. So I was spending that money and forgetting that I was supposed to be paying it. So this is where my credit got ruined because I actually thought, you know, you don't need to pay, you just use the money and not paying. So please, it's very important. I'm always saying it. God is your life, but credit means a lot. Without credit, you ain't going nowhere. To buy homes, to open a business, to even get an employment. Jobs these days, they'll check your credit before they actually hire you. You want to work in the banking industry, you want to be financial planner, your credit has to be checked. So it's very good that we should avoid making that mistakes. When you get a credit card, manage it, look at it. Try your possible best to make that payment. Don't scramble your credit card like me. I'm being honest. So, and also, late payment is very important. Don't make a late payment because I find out that a lot of people will say, "Don't worry, I'll pay tomorrow." If you're given a due date of your your statement on the credit card that you use, they'll tell you to pay 22nd of October, right? That's your due date. Try to pay prior to that. Okay, so to avoid that low credit score, because it's very without credit score, you're not going to get a mortgage, you're not going to get a credit card. Actually, most banks will not even give you. So we, the bank, will look at credit scores, and the credit score we look at is around 680.
680, but it all depends on how you manage your credit.
Thank you.
Basically, a lot of people don't realize they just get credit cards, Walmart, pay, now you go to the airport, they give you a credit card, you go to Rogers game, they give you a credit card, Maple Leafs give you credit cards, and all us bankers and brokers and everybody, everybody spends it, they don't realize it. And you're going over 80% of your limits, it's where your credit start hitting down.
Exactly.
Especially nowadays, even Rogers homes, you don't pay your bills, they'll ruin your credit.
Yeah,
Those are the ones that we hate them,
I
but
had them, sorry.
they put us in there. And the reason they did that is because a lot of people didn't pay their bills. A lot of people, they put people in a bad contract, and then you're stuck with them, and the only way they could do it, put it back on your credit, and then that's how you ruin your credit. So manage it. Credit is everything.
Everything.
Without the credit, you're gonna have like somebody like her coming and start spending, don't know how to pay, when to pay, and why do I need to pay it? It's not a free money, it's their money, and that's how they make 18% on it. You don't pay it, it's 29%, plus the collection and late fees. So manage your credit is the most important thing in buying a home or buying anything, because that's how you can get the better rate. It's not, even if you have bad credit, put 20% down, B lender, somebody will give it to you, but guess what? You're gonna be paying 7, 8%. Up to 14% I've seen people pay because they have no choice. And they did without planning, going to buy a home with a bad for a credit card. That's how it works. Manage your credit
Yeah,
every day.
it's very important. Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Please, the next one. So preparing for other expenses. So, once you get an approval from me, and then you have to look into the other expenses on that. So this is where when I came, this is where appraiser fee comes in, home inspection fee, level costs, title insurance premium, closing adjustment, land transfer tax, fire and property insurance premium, mortgage default insurance, land surveyor fees, moving expenses. All these things are all related in buying your home. So I've seen sometimes they'll tell me, oh, where am I going to get all that money? Right now I'm short of money, I don't know what to do, or then this is where panic attack comes in. So I always tell my customers that they always have to have 1.5% of the purchase price of the property they're buying. How many minutes? 5 minutes, oh my God. Okay. Yeah, they have to have 1.5% for them to go there. Okay, to purchase the property. Okay, so next slide. So just like what I said earlier, it's very important for you to, yeah, please go take this out. Thank you. Okay, you know what? That's it. There's nothing else. So this is where the real estate comes in. Okay, but I will let Sean talk to you guys regarding the program that just came out. So remember what is
The new CMT program,
Exactly.
the incentive,
yes? So Sean will talk to you.
it's a good program. It's a good program, but at the same time, some people like it, some people don't. There's not too many instructions on that. The pamphlet that we got, like if you look at it and go on their websites, they're also on this. I'm not sure if they have it in here. It's a home. Gosh, if I can remember, let me just go. It's called placetocallhome.ca. So when you go there, that's their calculation. They have, like, your income cannot exceed over 120. You cannot, 4 times that you can purchase. Their calculation is a little bit on the weird side, so that's why everybody was on it. Please use the calculator, but double check with a mortgage specialist or whoever you're working with. Make sure to get the numbers properly. If it goes even a slightly 0.01 over, CMT will not approve it. And the second thing they got on this first-time home buyer, I personally don't like it, the one that you can purchase from the builder. They give you 10%. But what they just told us, it's not guaranteed that that money will be there from. You buy it from the builder, 2 years from now, the government give $1.2 billion, that's the maximum. And once they run out, they don't have any more. So you can buy it from the builder, 2 years later, government don't have the money to give. But you already got approved for that 10%, it doesn't exist. They will not, they'll approve the deal. They'll give you an approval for the next 2 years, that's fine. But unless that money has been out of their account, they're still counting it. And once that money is out, now you're here on this side, you have no money. So please read all that. There's a lot of instruction in there. Read it. Have any question, you can call her, call me, and we'll figure out how we can get all that for you. And the best way to do it as a home, I personally like to resell homes, because the money that you have to give to the builder, you have to wait 2 years. Your money, making money for them, instead of that money for a resale home, will make money for you, and everything that you put into that house comes back to you. So what you have to do is, a lot of people that I notice is, they buy a smaller home, what they can afford, fix it up a little bit, make it look good, call them back, sell my house, now I can go buy something else. That's what you want to do. So planning is everything. Make sure you know what you're buying, and any questions, call in there.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Jane. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I understand that we're live streaming. So please, the next presenter should please stand in the light so that we can see you properly. So I believe this side is okay, right? Awesome. So our next speaker is no other but the barrister at law, He graduated with his LLB Honors in 1993 from the University of Ibadan. He was subsequently called to the Nigerian bar in 1994. He practiced as barrister and solicitor in Lagos, Nigeria for 5 years, mainly in criminal, civil, corporate, and commercial and land matters, before proceeding to the University of Helsinki in Finland for his master's in law, in public international law. He subsequently migrated to Canada in 2001 and was called to the Ontario Bar in May of 2004. He started his law practice immediately, focusing mainly in the area of real estate, civil litigation, family law, and child protection matters, as well as immigration and refugee law. Please join me to welcome no other person but barrister, lawyer, Akoniwaju Adajo.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. And thanks for the wonderful introduction. I love that. So, what are we doing here today? We're talking about homes. My friend that started the presentation gave us some roadmap in terms of how important home ownership is. It's stored on the agenda, if I can remember. One other thing that we should also note is that as a lawyer, in Ontario, you can't close up a transaction without a lawyer. You need a lawyer in any event. So lawyer is an integral part of real estate transaction. But I'll go through the slides, and at times I might digress, just bear with me. Thank you. So, of course, what you need to know to protect your real estate investment, it's probably one of your greatest investment, especially in Canada. So you need to be, you need to make sure that your investment is protected. The agreement of purchase and sale, it can be residential, it can be commercial. The bottom line is that before you firm up your agreement, what I mean by that is this: before you waive all the conditions, the financing condition, the inspection condition, whatever the condition is, it's always good to have a lawyer review it. Don't do it after the fact, okay? Because it's a big pitfall that many people have fell into. And it's only after the fact that you come to the lawyer's office when everything is firmed up. You now want the lawyer to sort out the problem. At that point, you might have, actually been in a legal jeopardy. And it's always problematic. And I always like to give a live example, so that people can really appreciate what we are talking about here. For example, in my practice, I've met with clients that actually fell into that category. Because sometimes when they meet up with, realtor, agents, mortgage brokers, sometimes they are so much in a hurry to buy. I want to buy, I like that house, I don't want it to go. So instead of, making sure that all the papers are in, they've gone to the mortgage specialist, making sure that they are pre-qualified, the mortgage is there, and making sure that at the end of the day, the house, is what they wanted. They, may go into it without actually having those proper things in place. And what then happens is that closing is 2 or 3 days away. There's no mortgage, okay? And you'll be calling them, what's going on? We need to go through the instruction. We need to request for funds from the bank. So, my agent is working on it. My broker is working on it. So, at that point, it might be it might end up that the deal is not going to close. And if it doesn't close, first of all, they have their deposit, maybe like $20,000, $30,000 that they've put down. Then you see lawyers writing letter. Your client is in breach of contract, we're going to sue, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But if the prospective buyer had done their due diligence, making sure that before they firm up the agreement and waive the conditions, the financing condition, the inspection condition, they brought it to the lawyer's office. The lawyer will say, look, do you have your mortgage in place? Okay, is it firm? Is it there? The inspection, has it been done? Okay, do you have your inspection report? All those things, are they in place? If they are not, the lawyer will say, hey, don't waive those conditions. Okay? Because if you waive those conditions, you're going to do that at your own peril. You're going to, come back and regret it. So more often than not, I've seen situations whereby those conditions are waived prior to making sure that they can meet all those conditions. So don't be a victim. It can be financially costly. I have a client that was sued over $500,000 because he couldn't close. And at the end of the day, the question is that he put down $25,000, and now the seller ended up selling the property, below what he actually purchased it for. Now they are coming after him to come and, give them the balance. You could save that if you just, went to your lawyer's office and you got the proper legal advice. So it's extremely important. Don't let the lawyer be the last step. It should be the first, in fact, because we're talking about contracts. Okay, when it comes to contracts, that is what we do. That's our, bread and butter. So that we give you proper advice, making sure that you don't become a victim, and it can be financially challenging. The other thing that it's important that I must bring to your attention is that sometimes the clients will be calling, I put down 10%, okay? I put down 20%, I'm like, okay, so from my own point of view, I don't know how much you're going to bring in yet. Okay, how much am I going to bring? I say, I don't know. I will only know, one, if I have the instruction from the bank. I can determine, okay, this is how much the bank is going to give to you. If I have what is called a statement of adjustment from the seller's lawyer, so that I know that, okay, your deposit has been factored in, they factored the property insurance, and if it is a condominium, they say, okay, condo expenses, all those things are in the statement of adjustment. So I will know how much you need, that you're going to be sending to the seller's lawyer. So, and then I can determine, okay, this is my own fee, okay, these are other expenses that you need to run, It's only at that point that I can advise the client and say, okay, this is how much you need to bring. Without those informations, I can't tell you how much you need to bring in. So it's always important that all these things are dealt with way before, closing. Sometimes closing will be 2 or 3 days. You don't even have instructions. I closed the deal yesterday. I got instruction, today is Saturday. I got instruction on Thursday. The closing date was supposed to be on the 17th. And you see, when you're dealing with, you talk about, A side and B side. When you're dealing with B side, equitable trust, you're dealing with home trust. When you see trust, be very careful. Okay, it's about, it doesn't matter anyway, because at the end of the day, they run their program through a third party called the FCT, First Canadian Title. And, despite the fact that you've gone through the rigors of going through, the broker, and they ask for this, they ask for that, they would then repeat the same thing that the lawyer should be providing. It can be tasking. And the amount of document that you have to go through. Okay, so at the end of the day, if you are going to use a B, lender, it's always important that you make sure that ahead of time, all those conditions are met so that the lawyer will have enough time. In fact, I had to leave other jobs. I told the client, I said, look, normally if I'm going to charge you, I'll charge you times 3. Because at the end of the day, I had to leave, other important files that I'm supposed to be dealing with to focus on your file alone. Okay? And the client is calling, yeah, it's a new property. I said, look, if you call me 20 times, I'm not going to, be able to help you. Just don't worry, we'll deal with it. We'll try our best, But at the end of the day, if you keep calling me, the time that I'm supposed to be spending doing your job, I would, of course, be using it to talk to you. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's important that you deal with issues ahead of time so that it gives everyone who is going to be involved enough time to deal with it. Okay, can we go to the, okay, so I missed the land transfer tax. Land transfer tax is another thing that I should, mention as I'm speaking. Like the deal I closed yesterday, the client was thinking he was going to pay about $15,000 in land transfer tax. Apparently, maybe nobody actually told him that, as a first-time home buyer, at least you can get $4,000 off, depending. So when I told him, oh, your land transfer tax is just about 9,000 and some change, he said, I thought it's 15,000. I said, okay, no, it's 9,000. So those are part of the information that, of course, the lawyer must pass on to the client so that the client can at least get the benefit of land transfer tax. And that will, of course, form part of what the lawyer is going to be asking the clients to bring as closing funds. Okay. The other thing that the lawyer would normally do is to do title search. Lawyers, at least in Ontario, you have access to the land registry. Okay, you go in there, you just make sure that if Mr. Hay said he's the one selling the property, you want to make sure that at least it is Mr. Hay that is on the title of the property. That's part of the lawyer's job. And also to look at the title and say, okay, are there any mortgages that needed to be discharged on title? Are there any lien that must be dealt with before closing? And as we all know, if you had purchased a property before, there is what is called a search day, okay? Maybe about 15 or 20 days before the re-closing. That gives the lawyer the opportunity to examine title, to make sure that the title is good and that Mr. Hay that is selling the property is not a fictitious person. Okay, or that the title is not solid. And then you prepare for closing date. Of course, requisition will be sent out to the other lawyer just to make sure that if there's any issue, the seller's lawyer can deal with it, or the seller. That, okay, there has been a mortgage that has been sitting there for 10 years. Meanwhile, that mortgage is supposed to have been paid, or whether it has been paid, it wasn't discharged. You need to deal with all those issues prior to, to your closing. So that's part of what you do when you do title search. Of course, lawyer's opinion versus title insurance. As a lawyer, I can give opinion about title. It's only the lawyer that is legally able to give, title opinion. The other thing is, despite the fact that I do the searches, I can say, okay, look, it's better you buy title insurance as well. What title insurance does is to ensure that at the end of the day, you are able to have peace of mind. If let's say the person who sold to you stole the title, okay, instead of you suing your lawyer, okay, and say, oh, you messed up, you didn't do these searches properly, the title insurance is there to at least, compensate the buyer who actually purchased title insurance. So it's always a kind of additional safeguard in the process. Of course, the other thing is that the bank will want fire insurance. The bank is not going to give you money without making sure that there's fire insurance in place, to make sure that if the property burns down today, there is insurance to protect their interest. And then, taking title to the property, it can be joint tenant, husband and wife normally will take as joint tenant. Joint tenant means that if I die today and it's me and my wife on title, the property normally will go to my wife. Okay, sometimes people, assist other people to buy, and they don't do proper documentation. And at the end of the day, there might be issues in the future. Say, the person's supposed to have 1%, but they didn't put it there just as joint tenants, but they didn't really contribute anything. And one of the title holder now dies. The problem is that the other person might say, oh, but it's part of my property. We are co-owner, but when the property was purchased, it was supposed to be just for 1%, but it was not, the title was not taken properly. That can be an issue. You should have that in mind too. Finally, of course, your lawyer closes your deal, and you are happy. But the most important is that make sure you give your lawyer enough time to deal with issues. Before I round up, I have this flyer that I left on the seat there. It's just a way to help people save money too. As a lawyer, I help people list property. Okay, say you want to sell your property now. You bring it to me. I help you list on MLS, okay? And the whole concept is to ensure that you get maximum profit from your property. So sometimes we negotiate in terms of what commission is payable, on the property. And the double advantage is that a lawyer is handling your real estate from the, get-go. I mean, contract is prepared, we negotiate it, and the money is paid. So the amount that you're going to pay to the lawyer is way, way less, in terms of when you use the normal process, of selling real estate. So I always encourage people, on an average transaction of, $500,000, probably you are saving about $10,000. That's a lot of money, and with a lot of peace of mind. And, we call it safe and secure. You get maximum profits from your property, and you can go to rest, you can go to bed, that there won't be any litigation that will come after you've sold your property. So I think that's just the long and short of my presentation. I will talk about questions when we are sitting down thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you again. And so our final speaker is Ose Ainabe. He's an expert at securing mortgages across Canada for both local and international clients, an award-winning mortgage agent with over 5 years of real estate financing experience and a wealth of mortgage product knowledge. It will guide you through the entire process, leading you to your own occupied or investment property, respectively. From a young age, he has had great interest and passion for real estate, which has grown over the years and is now evident in his expertise as a real estate investor and enthusiast. And I'm sure some people may be wondering, we just had a mortgage specialist talk to us. Why do we have somebody else coming to talk to us about mortgages? Ose will be able to answer that question. So please join me to welcome Ose Ainabe.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Ose Ainabe. I'm a mortgage broker. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to Mrs. Adejisola for this opportunity again to come talk about mortgages. My slide. So basically, I'm just going to be touching up on what my colleagues already talked about on the A side. So I'm going to be talking more on the B side and the private side, but I'm going to touch up on a few things too on the A side. Just 1 second. Sorry about the delay.
It's over there when it comes up instead of Tom.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, let me just try this. All right, so I'm just gonna just okay. All right, so I'm gonna just go by my slides here. So basically, I'm gonna be talking about credit, income, down payment. I'm gonna touch a little bit on first-time home buyers, the program, and then new to Canada and foreign buyers. So, like my colleagues already said, typically you want on the A side, lenders usually look for credit scores of 680 and over, so that you qualify, you basically maximize your purchasing power, and you qualify for potentially the best rates in the industry. Below that, you still qualify, but you might not be maximizing your purchasing power. So where we come in as mortgage brokers is when your credit score is like super low, like I would say from 620 down into the 500s, or no credit. Credit utilization. So basically, you want to, at the time of reporting, you want to try and make sure you don't owe more than 30% of your limit, typically. I know it's not too practical, but that's what you want to practice as much as possible. Again, on the B side, because I deal with a lot of mortgage lenders on the A, B, and private side. So on the B side, okay. Maybe just dim the light a bit, the light. All right. Okay, perfect. All right. So next slide. Okay, so like I was saying, on the B side, we have lenders that will look at clients with missed mortgage payments, for example, because we all know life happens, so sometimes you don't typically have control over these things. Separations and things like that, loss in the family, loss of job. That's where we come in, because we're able to get mortgages for clients like that for a short term, and then we move them back on the A side after some years of building their credit. Okay. All right, next slide. All right, so like my colleague said, full-time employment is king. Everybody wants to lend money to clients that have full-time jobs. So yeah, like after 3 months, you're typically okay to buy after your probation period. Sometimes there's employers that would have you do a 6-month probation or more. Lenders will look at this deal after the first 3 months still. On the part-time side, you typically need 2 years history, like my colleague said. The B lenders they're more flexible, because sometimes they will look at your income, even if you've done less than 2 years. Seasonal and contract, they kind of fall in the same category as part-time, because you typically need 2 years. But again, we've done deals on the B side that you typically will be able to get a mortgage even if you've been there for less than 2 years. Business for self, so self-employed clients. Sometimes, as a self-employed client, most of us don't claim as much income. Like say you make 100,000, we have write-offs, right? On the B side, the lenders will typically ask for bank statements, right? We look at the cash flow, see how much money is coming into the account, and then ask the client how much they write off, reasonably. And then we're able to use the difference to qualify them. Next slide, please. All right, so savings. If you're looking to buy a property, you typically want to have your savings in your account for a minimum of 90 days. So 3 months. Both is the same on the A and the B side. You can use investments to GICs, RSPs, TFSAs, but still, they will ask for a 3-month history, and then you can cash out those funds into your checking account. You can also use gifts from family members to buy property, right? But they have to be immediate family members, so parents and siblings. But before you buy that property, the money has to be transferred from that family member into your account. Next slide, please. All right, so like my colleague said, you want to pre-qualify before you even start going around looking for a property. I'm saying this especially when you're buying a pre-construction property. It closes typically a year or two down the line, sometimes 3 years. If you don't talk to a mortgage broker and you buy a property of say 500,000, at the time of closing, even if the builder does a 5% down payment structure, you might have to come up to 20%. Okay, so typically I would say is to be on the safe side, you want to definitely talk to a mortgage broker and have a minimum of and just kind of save for 20% down. If you qualify for 5%, all fantastic, but you want to protect yourself. Next slide, please. All right, so this is new to Canada clients. So basically, if you when you're new to Canada, you can actually buy a property after 6 months. But on the A side, lenders will typically require a 10% down. After 12 months, you can buy a property and do 5% down, right? But you have to have full-time employment, because if you have part-time, then it's going to have to be a minimum of 2 years. You can also buy a property with a valid work permit with a SIN number starting with 9, okay? You can actually put 5% down. I was just talking about it with my colleague the other day. If you're not a spouse, say like there's 2 people on the deal, right? And you're not the spouse, you have to pay the 15% foreign buyer tax, right? Even if you're doing 5% down. But if you're the spouse, right, and the co-applicant on the deal, then the main applicant is a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, then you're exempt from that tax. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right, so we have a lot of clients overseas that have kids schooling in Canada, right? So you might have your wife here or your kids in Canada. You can actually buy a property too. You just have to have a valid Canadian visa, and we can actually use your income from, say, Nigeria, right? But you have to come up with 35% down, and then you have to have 1 year worth of mortgage payments, property tax, what's the heating and all that stuff, right? For 12 months as security, just in case you miss a payment, the bank can just go in there and, take from that. Yes, and the foreign buyer tax definitely applies. All right? It's 15% of the value of the property. Yeah. Yeah, so 35, yeah, true. All right, so investments. So you can invest as a Canadian citizen, foreign buyer, or a Canadian or a permanent resident. Next slide, please. All right, so prime lender, we talk prime lenders, we basically refer to them as A lenders too, right? Alternate lenders are the B lenders. They're, like I said, they're more lenient. You can actually, they typically would do 20% down, right? So your credit is not the best. You don't typically qualify on the A side. Your income doesn't meet the A lending criteria. You can come on the B side, and we can do a short-term plan, maybe 1 or 2 years, and then move you back to the A side. Also, on the B side, the lenders actually go up to, there's some of the lenders that will go up to 40-year amortization. Meanwhile, typically on the A side, especially when your deal is insured, you can go over 25-year amortization. Private lenders. So private lenders typically don't care too much about income, but their rates are high. I was going to mention on the B side, rates will typically start from 3.89% all the way to like maybe 5 or 6%. On the private side, they will start from 6% and can go up to 15%. Like my colleague already mentioned, there's three insurers. So CMHC, Canada Guarantee, and GenWard. Next slide. All right, so that's my very brief presentation. If you have any questions, we're going to be sitting here and then you can ask us. Thanks a lot.
We'll leave that moment for now, okay? So that guy I talk to him, he's been trying to reach you.
We're chatting. I'll do it today when I get back.
We can start actually. It doesn't matter. We can start actually. We could. What do you prefer? Do you need help?
All right, good evening, everyone. On behalf of the House of David, I want to appreciate our guest speakers for the wealth of knowledge they've passed over to us on owning your home as a new immigrant in Canada. I'm Bumiolu Alasino, and I'm a member of House of David. So I'll be moderating this session, and would invite us to ask our questions. If you have any questions to ask, we have the mic passing around, so just signify by raising your hand and ask your question. Yes, I also have some questions written down here for you guys. So maybe I should just set the ball rolling. Let me set the ball rolling. So for Andrew, yes, you are wearing two hats here today. You are an immigrant, and you're also a realtor. You've been here for some years, and you've had some experiences as well. So I would like you to advise us, the new immigrants coming into Canada, on the best way to go about it, owning our home, with your experience, not, as owning our own homes and getting settled in our homes in the shortest period possible.
Thank you much. To be fair, things have changed compared to when we did come in. The market has changed. The market condition has changed. My sister there was talking about Milton was 30,000 where they came in. We were 70,000. Now Milton is 140,000. interest rate regime has changed. The mortgage rules were not like this. So to be fair, it would be unfair to say to do what it's not the same thing. However, from experience, we did work with professionals like the people on stage. I think it helps. We worked with mortgage specialists. We did work with a lawyer. As a matter of fact, it's the same lawyer that we've been using since we came. That's still our lawyer. But I met today. I've met Barrister Ashiwaju. What do you call it? You know, the barrister. Yeah. But what I'm saying, basically, I work with the profession. So from my own experience, though, we did buy. Like I said, the market wasn't the same. Again, our own situation was slightly different because we came and went back. We went to prepare. So that's
You can fully get.
yes.
Yes. So just match that experience with the current situation.
Yes, the current. Yeah, the reality on ground, like I said, the market has changed. Then we bought a semi in Milton for $328,000 dollars. I said.
How many years back?
Yeah, that was in 2011. 2011, 8 years ago. So we bought it. You see, I had to talk about Naira again. So the exchange rate then too in Naira, as a Nigerian, coming from Nigeria, was slightly easier. So that's also something that also helped because then it was 130, 140 for a Canadian dollar. So if you wanted to put a down payment for 20%, then 60,000 was 10 million, less than 10 million Naira, unlike now. So that's why I said things have changed. However, we went, planned, and worked with our mortgage specialist and bought a home. But it pays to buy a home because a year later, when my wife was sniffing the market, she was like saying she's hearing that prices are going up, so we better move to another home. And that's the point someone raised, was it Sean, talked about, first get a small home. You don't need to buy this big home. So maybe the learning point is take a smaller home. We did buy a small home on Andrews Trail. I'll never forget it. Somebody said I owned the home and the street in Nigeria, because it was Andrews Trail. But Andrews Trail, yeah. So then a year later, when we now moved to where we currently live. So that's basically. And one other thing I'd like to share with you in terms of real estate is, look, you can become a wealth creator. It can help you to create wealth, or a wealth builder for you, because that's helped me. So I'm not only moved from a homeowner, I become an investor in real estate as well. So, but I took advantage of the opportunities in the new construction market compared to, because since I already had my own home I live in, but for the new construction, the flexible payment plan made it easy for me because I could just put down 5,000 here, and put, over time. So that's also the opportunity in the that you can take advantage of. So I don't know if that helps, but that's basically, like I said, the conditions are completely different. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, questions from the crowd for Andrew? Well, could be any of the speakers.
Okay, thank you. I can't remember who said it, but I think a few people might have said it. I think it might be the lawyer. Your client was asking, how much should I bring? Now, the assumption most of us might have is that when you've already been given a mortgage, should that not cover everything? Because you hear them saying, at closing, you need to bring a check. So, can you explain more for clarity?
Well, thank you. I think the point is that you've worked with your mortgage broker. I mean, who will have at least break down the amounts that you need, depending on how much you are putting down. So at that point, at least that gives you some sense of, what you may need. They will say, okay, plus closing cost. They always say that. So what is closing cost? sometimes you may not know, okay? So it's always better to say, okay, what are the closing costs that I'm expecting? Part of it will be land transfer tax. There's no debate about that. You're going to pay. If you're a new home buyer, of course, you get some credit, but you will still have to pay. Of course, part of it is also you have to pay your lawyer, okay? That's part of your closing cost. But most importantly, what I tell my client is this, especially when we have some time to discuss. I can break down the figure for them and say, look, the bottom line is that once I have the statement of adjustment, from the other lawyer who is selling, that gives me how much I need to ask you to go and bring. And I still need the mortgage instruction as well. The bank will tell me, okay, this is how much we're going to send to you, for these clients. So sometimes the clients may not factor in, maybe there will be other money that the bank may deduct. Sometimes, CMHC fee will apply. And maybe, title insurance, sometimes if you are dealing with all these, bill lenders. So it's only at that point that the lawyer can tell you how much you need to close. But the rule of thumb is that ask questions. That's always important, because if you don't ask questions, you don't get to have answers. And then there will be surprises when you want to close. If you are not satisfied with, the responses, try and, ask around. And that's part of why we say it's always better let your lawyer look at your agreement. Because at the end of the day, if your lawyer looks at it, although the lawyer may not give you how much you need to close, the lawyer can still explain certain things to you in terms of what your expectation will be in terms of closing costs.
Just give one example for closing cost. For let's say new construction, sometimes the builder may have all sorts. It's worse with the builders for new construction. There are so many things that you wouldn't expect. You start seeing things like some fees. Even the letter that they send to you, to send the letter, they start those costs now start coming up. So that's an example. There's also HST for new construction as well, even though you can apply for rebate ultimately, but that would also cost. So imagine 13% comes, it hits you from nowhere. 13% of 500, how much? 500,000, 65,000. You have to come up with that money. Okay.
So, sorry, I have a follow-up question. Well, not a follow-up question. Just if this assumption is correct, is that to say that if I'm pre-approved, for example, for 500,000, I shouldn't go and shop with all that 500,000? Or if I say I want to spend all the 500,000 I have been pre-approved for, let me have it at the back of my mind that at closing, I might be needing up to 20% of that 500,000. Up to, I'm not saying it is going to be. Is that correct? First, don't go and shop. If the bank or A lender or B lender or private lender, if I'm pre-approved for 500,000 mortgage, I should not go and shop and spend my entire 500,000. Is that one? Two, if I do spend all my 500,000 in purchasing a home, I should then have in my pocket a family, somebody, I should be able to get an additional 20% at closing, may not be up to. I'm saying this from my own experience, so people really know what they want to get into.
I'll explain all the questions. Number one, the way it would be, when we say 500,000, that's your mortgage amount that you qualify for. So now you get to choose how much you want to purchase. So from 500 on, if you want to put 100,000, so now your purchase price becomes 600. So 500 will give you, 100 becomes that. But also, if it's under 20%, don't forget now CMHC comes in. Then if you put 5% down, you have to put the CMHC on a 5%, you pay 4% fee. Don't forget that. Then that adds up to it. And then when you go to the lawyer, like your previous question comes in, why nobody told me that costs are here? Number one, once you have a CMHC, there's a HST on it. Anything you buy in Canada, there's tax. including their insurance fee. Even though that's the government insurance, they still charge you that. And then a lot of people just say, well, the lawyer didn't tell me or somebody didn't tell me why the cost is all of this. What he has to do is when he purchases, we get the instructions to him, he has to title search your property that you just purchased. And then on top of that, he also makes sure that his property taxes are up to date. So if you're buying a home in October, closing date in October, and the previous owner paid the taxes all the way to December, somebody has to pay that money back to the owner. So who pays it? You as a new homeowner, because you've already paid it, so he has to ask you for that money. So anything adjusts itself up and down. Sometimes what happens is he didn't even pay the taxes, so now you have to pay all the taxes, then he has to ask from their lawyer, this is how much you want back. There's so much into it that's when he said he's got to get the adjustment to get it all. There's a lot into it, and that's what you need him to make sure he gets everything in black and white to understand what he's doing. So the fees are up and down, but you will pay minimum of 1.5% closing cost. So that's what it'll be. And the mortgage amount that you said, it's always that mortgage amount is what you qualify, and then you can put as much as you want on top of that. Did I answer your question? Okay.
No, what I was saying.
Okay, go ahead.
So the question, it was like a clarification.
Mm-hmm.
So I know if the bank pre-approved me for 500, this is what I'm going to give
Yes.
or the lender. But at the same time, the bank also wants to be sure you will close because they don't want to go into any nitty-gritty with you. So if the bank pre-qualifies me for 500,000,
Yes.
if I know I'm not getting any money from anywhere, because obviously if I purchase a house of 350,000,
Mm-hmm.
I have 150 left. My closing costs can be accommodated. That's what I want to know. Can my closing costs be accommodated, or I still have to provide the
You need your down payment plus your closing cost. So when we give you a yes, so what it is when we say 500,000, you already told me how much you're putting down, so you already proven to me how much you're putting down, and from your income and your down payment will work out the max you can qualify. So you always have to consider your down payment and your 1.5% closing cost out of that, and that's where the new mortgage starts, is that's your loan. You're welcome.
So closing costs from what we've heard is variable. It could be anything depending on the condition of purchase. So for Jane, I would like to ask, you mentioned high ratio. So what is high ratio?
So the high ratios is if you're not putting 20% down, okay, on a mortgage, you're literally a high ratio person. So this is where the insurance comes in. So remember, we talked about Genworth Insurance, CMSC, and Canada Guarantee. So this, we the bank would never give you money if we know that you're putting 5% down, because you're a high risk person. So that's where insurance will cover you for that particular loan that we're going to be giving to you. So that's what high ratios are. So
Basically, anything under 20%, you need an insurance premium, and that also brackets on a 5%, 10%, and up to 19.99%. And then your fees are different.
Okay. All right. So for Ose, you mentioned Jane spoke about A lender, but you were here to talk about B lenders. So can you clarify what each category means and the difference? Of course, your clarification will know the difference.
All right. So, as mortgage brokers, we have access to A lenders, B lenders, and private lenders. A lenders have a very strict guideline, right? You have to fit in the box, perfect, right? For example, B lenders will not give you a mortgage if you're putting less than 20% down. So that's where A lenders come in. So A lenders are the BMOs, the TDs, the banks, and so many other, they call them monoline lenders, like the home trust, the equitable banks. They have an A and a B side. So on the A side, they're very competitive. Like, they will offer you close to what the big banks will offer you, but generally, they kind of have the same guidelines, right, on the A side. On the B side, you need, like I said, minimum of 20% down. They will give you an amortization of up to 30 years. So basically, your payments it makes it easier to qualify, right, on the B side. On the private side, they're not that particular about the guidelines, the stress tests and things like that, but the rates are high, and they will give you money. They'll give you a loan based on interest-only payments, typically for 1 year maximum, right? They can give you up to 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and then after 1 year, if you still need the loan, you can renew, right? So the difference is just basically rates, qualification, flexibility, and amortization. Yeah.
So from your delivery now, we have 3 categories of lenders: A lenders, B lenders, and private lenders, right? All right, thank you. Okay.
This is just, a very practical advice. If you must buy at all, don't go to private lenders. No, I get that, but I'm just, as a matter of practicality, what I've seen, in my office every day, people are sucked up, and hardly can you pay back. Well, apart from the interest rate, they're going to charge you, lender's fee, brokerage fee, that fee. So at the end of the day, what you are getting, I can tell you, may not even meet the financial needs that you want. It all depends. But it's, my advice is that as much as possible, stay within the A and B. Don't go put yourself in trouble.
Just quickly clarify that. So I'm not selling private lenders. It's a niche product. It's only available if absolutely necessary. I've had clients that, they've basically gone to the A side. Somebody has pre-qualified them, right? Things changed, 3 days to closing. The builder is coming after you, the seller is coming after you. You have to close in most cases. If not, you're going to lose your deposit, like the lawyer said, and they're going to come after you, right, to sue. We're just talking about one a few days ago. We're going to first explore the B side, typically when we see clients like that in dire need, right? And then it's always a short-term solution. Yes, they have high rates, they have fees, but as a broker, I have access to over 20 of them. So I'm not going to take you to the person offering the highest rates, right? And it's always a short-term solution for basically clients in trouble, right? That's where they come in typically.
Like earlier I said, guys, don't forget credit. The reason he's taking you there, the reason fell apart on the last minute is your credit. Please, credit is everything. People have come to us last minute. They went bought a car. They didn't tell us. We give them a pre-approval, $500,000, and then behind my back, they went bought a home, and then they just like that Mercedes looked good, and then the guy said, I can do it for you. $245 bi-weekly, but if you turn it to a monthly, it's over $600. They don't realize that. That's where everything falls apart. The reason I say you end up going to be in a private, it's not a long term, it's a short term. He's just a bandage for now to fix your problem. He's not like there to do that because he has no choice. Now he has to find you a home, not getting sued. You rather sometimes go into private than get sued, because then you have a bigger problem on your hand. You can go short term, fix the problem, put a bandage on it, get yourself back together. You can go back to him again and say, okay, what are we doing? You can fix it, or back to him in a year. Listen, I can't fix my bandage. The bandage is coming off, and I'm still bleeding. There's no way stopping it. So guess what? He'll put it back in the market. You'll get your money back. Maybe sometimes you lose, sometimes you gain. So he's a short-term bandage. Private, you never go unless you have no choice. B lender, again, it's a short term because he can put you on a B lender to do whatever he has to do to put you on the A site. That's what it will be at the end of the day. So B is also the same thing.
Okay. Want to say something? No, there's one more question. Okay. All right, so. No problem.
Okay, good evening. I just want clarification on how much the down payment should be, because the impression I'm always having is when the price of a property is over 500,000, then it has to be 10%. Then with the rising costs in the market, you look at it, you see it's 700,000, 800,000, and you're thinking, where am I going to get 80,000 or more? Then in the course of this week, I was having a discussion with a colleague, and he told me usually the way it's calculated is the first 500,000 will be calculated at 5%, then every other thing above will be 10%. So I just want clarification on that.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the correct number. So just like what I said. 5%, 10%. Yeah, 5%.
For what percentage of deposits? I just want to know. Because you have said they calculate first and with 5%.
Okay, so this is where I come in. Okay, it's just like what I said earlier. You can't wake up and say you want to buy a home. You have to work with your mortgage specialist or your mortgage broker. So when you come to me and tell me, Jane, I'm looking to buy a home, and the first thing I'm going to ask you, how's your credit like? And you say, oh, my credit is 650. Oh, sorry, 650 you might not qualify, probably 680. And then I'll say, okay, perfect. And then what about your income? So your income determine how much you can actually purchase a home. You cannot be making $30,000 a year, and then you're looking to buy a home of $600,000.
So can you just break it down? You mentioned 32%.
No. I said your income.
No, 32% earlier.
Okay.
Break it down. Just take an example so that, for instance, maybe I'm earning 50,000. So how do you calculate what that person could get for mortgage?
It's based on your credit. It's based on the debt you have. So just like what Sean said, if you're looking to buy a home, you won't gotta be driving a Mercedes and you know that your monthly payment is $700. That have killed the deal. Except listen, your income matters. That's what I say. We, the bank, will look at your income. So your income and your debt, if those don't go together.
It's the standard is 4%, 4 times.
And I have, let's say, 10,000 debts. How much do I qualify for?
With $50,000.
Just say how much that person
200.
Thank you. That's
2 to 250.
Yeah.
Can I throw more like maybe?
Yes.
Maybe, yeah, exactly, less.
From a realtor perspective, typically we advise our clients to go to their mortgage professionals. But one of the things we do too on our website, on the CREA, Canadian Real Estate Association, or most of you have what you call mortgage calculator. It helps you to just kind of give you an idea of how much, not what you qualify, but says okay based on. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
There's a real mortgage calculator. You can go in, put in your numbers. That's a pointer to how to solve that.
Okay.
So I need that kind of.
Okay, so there's a Canadian Real Estate Association. Just go there. Go to realtor.ca. Sorry, realtor.ca. I think that's the Real Estate Association is for us, the professional. But realtor.ca tells you everything about properties. There's a mortgage calculator there, so you can just do that, or the banks. But that one is the realtor.ca. But the point I wanted to just build upon is, and it's linked to the earlier point that was made about lessons learned from people or lessons I can share. One of the lessons I forgot to mention is I started out my wife's friend, where we landed was Oakville. But Oakville was where we wanted to buy a home. But the prices of Oakville was higher than Milton. So we went to Milton. We saw Milton, and we are here in Milton today. Milton is grown. So I still think it's important to look at other markets. It's very important that you look at other markets, because if you look at for what you qualify with this new mortgage stress test, I think I hear the qualifying rate is 5 point. Even though the mortgage rate is 3, you hear the mortgage rate is 3% or 2 point something percent. But I think the whole idea, my understanding is that should in case the market goes gaga, things go wrong, there is some tremor in the market, would you survive? What would the market be? That's my understanding. I'm not an expert, but I hear that they use that rate to qualify you, the stress test, to test whether you can survive. Can you pay when the interest rates go up to that rate? So from what I've seen, generally for new immigrants, typically their qualification, for properties they qualify for around 500. Typically, I'm just speaking from the people that I've met. It might not be fair because some people earn more. They qualify for more as well. But so for those starter homes, right now, it's difficult to get them around here. And that's why I'm saying you may need to start looking at other markets. I still advise my clients to look at other markets.
But did you get your answer? Did you get your answer? Or no?
Did you get your answer?
Did you get your answer for the down payment? Okay. So the down payment, CMHC came out last year, as the government actually came out, is the first 500,000 that you purchase is 5%. Anything after 500, you got to put 10%. For example, if you're buying a 700, so first 500 is 25,000. The second 200, now we got to break it. The second 200 becomes 20,000. So your total down payment is 45. But what they're calculating now they got to go back and put the CMHC in there. It's 5% fee, not 10% premium. It's 5% premium. That would be 4% fee. So that's what they'll do. So yes, you're putting 5, but it's actually 6.59. That's roughly what it'll be. So they'll go up to 999. So your first 500 is 25,000, and anything 49999 is $49,999. But if it goes to million, now CMHC walks away. The banks or anybody else, they have to put 20%. And once you put 20, now you have a choice of staying 25 years amortization or going up to 30. By going to 30 and you're putting 20, now you qualify for a lot more. Don't forget that. Anytime you put 20% down, you have an option of going from 25 to 30 years amortization, and your qualification of a home goes higher. So because you get a 5-year amortization rate, and on top of that, our guidelines and CMHC guidelines, 3944, what it means is 39% of your income has to qualify for this home, and 44% of your income is for your home and all your other debts. So those two numbers, when you put 20% down, now the major banks look at you differently, that you actually have a better saving, not a 5%, you're a little bit on a higher risk. That's what the insurer comes in. So when you put 20, it gives you a better leverage of actually, if you qualify for, let's just say 900, but you're putting 20% down, your income is just 3944, we can actually increase it up to 4550. We can even do that. There's always room. It depends on the clients, how strong they are, what we're looking at, and what's their future job will bring them on. That's what we look at always. So don't forget that. That's also there.
Okay. I just want to deviate a bit from owning your home to talking about investment properties. So as a landlord, I've heard that people have horror stories of tenants damaging your property. So as a landlord, what's your recourse if your tenants, the damage to your property exceeds their deposit? That's the first thing. And then on what grounds can a landlord eject a tenant, and how much notice needs to be provided to that tenant? And also, if the frequency of carrying out maintenance work on an investment property is above normal, what can the landlord do? And again, is it possible for tenants to default on rent payment, and I know it's possible, but what can the landlord do in that instance? And then lastly, if, for instance, there's a sidewalk next to your property and your tenant fails to clean up, shovel the snow, and a pedestrian slips and falls, or you get a fine, a letter of fine from the town or the city, who is responsible for paying that fine?
I will try randomly. You might need to remind me some of the questions,
Okay.
but let me take with the last one. I am not a lawyer, but typically the landlord is responsible for the property. Tenant, except it's expressly written that the tenant will be responsible for that. But I think before I go on, I think it speaks to this point. Typically, I know most people don't send their agreements, tenancy agreement to lawyers. Just a piece of advice, so that we don't just people. It's important that you send such agreements to lawyers, and I think my friend here, I'm sure he's used to it. People typically don't, but it's always good to, especially if you're a tenant. It's just good to share with lawyers. But that point, the landlord is responsible for for that issue because you own the home. Then you talked about if the tenant doesn't default in payment, what can the landlord do? You see, there's this Ontario standard lease that came into effect in April 2018. It expressly states that, in fact, that's the lease that you should start using. If you do not use that lease, that document, moving forward, there's no contract. I'm not a lawyer, but from what I know, there's no contract between you and that tenant, because that's the lease moving forward, because that's the lease there details all the points. It talks about, you cannot just throw out a tenant, for example. I think you still need to go to the tenancy board, landlord-tenant board, to apply for ejection. But that's a what do you call it? That could be a reason to eject the tenant. What's the other one? If the damage exceeds the deposit, again, it's all about the agreement. There's the tenants board, the landlord tenants board, that helps with redressing issues between landlord and tenants. It's a difficult question to answer, but typically, like I said, it's important that you use that standard lease agreement. What's the other one? It depends on who's responsible. It might not be the tenant may not. It could just be from regular tear and wear and tear. So except if there's a willful damage, there's evidence that the tenant damages it willfully. You're responsible for. But usually in the agreements, you see, they usually put some. Say again? Yeah, usually, and sometimes he also puts the limit in terms of amount. I don't know. Do you deal with tenancy agreement?
It's not really my main area of practice, but I've had a situation whereby I had to go to the tenancy board to try and get people evicted. There are many reasons why you may want to evict a tenant. Of course, if you don't pay your rent, or you don't pay your rent in full, those can be grounds to evict a tenant. And as you may know, there are forms that you need to prepare and serve on the tenant, and of course with proper notices. Okay, it all depends on the kind of breaches that you are talking about. So more or less, no matter what the situation is, especially if it is non-payment of rent, your recourse is to go to the board and serve proper notices. You talk about willful damage to the property. That can be grounds upon which you can evict a tenant, as well. Or let us say, for example, the tenant is bringing in people. Maybe you rented just one room and there's agreement that only him or her will be living there. Now he's bringing 2 or 3 people into the unit. Of course, it can be ground for you to approach the tenant board for eviction. Other reasons, let me give you this example. Sometimes in the contract they write, okay, no pets, no this, no that. Listen, you can't evict somebody because they bring in a pet into the property. Because in Canada, to some extent, pets are more or less deemed as part of the family. So you you have to be careful in terms of that kind of situation. With respect to somebody falling down on the property, of course, I mean, there's always property insurance. Okay, that's part of that can cover issues like that. And it may sometimes be that whose space is that a place where the person falls down. It might be, maybe it belongs to the city. Okay, so it all depends on the situation. Okay, I've had an instance, although it's not really about tenancy. I have a client that was attacked by a dog. Okay, the owner was just walking the dog around the street, and then the dog charged on my client. And as she was trying to run away, she fell and broke one of her fingers. So we sued. Eventually, what happened was that the property insurance, because they deemed the dog as part of someone who is living in the property. So the insurance, of course, came in to come and deal with that. So I hope we're able to answer your question in that regard.
To add to your point about when there's heavy maintenance on the property, one of the things you can do is you can justify a rent increase. You know the rent increase is typically regulated. For this year, I think it's 1.8%. You can't go beyond that. But if you want to go beyond that regulated CPI, the Consumer Price Index of 1.8%, you can actually apply to the Landlord Tenants Board and say, look, this property is getting so expensive, this rent is no longer justifiable. I need to increase the rent to cover this kind of cost. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. So because of our time, we'll take one last question. And after that,
Okay, thank you. I think I have just 2 questions. I won't take your time. No, just 2, please. Yeah, short questions. So quickly, the first one is when you show the slides of the Go station. I notice every time we talk about real estate, I've noticed since I came to Canada about 4 months ago, people tend to talk about the west of Toronto a lot. You talk about Houghton region, Peel, Cambridge, all the way to Niagara. Why is there no talk around going to the north of Toronto? Go towards the Barrie area, or go towards the east of Toronto, towards Ajax and Oshawa? Is there any particular reason? That's one. Secondly, I would just like a clarification. I understand that the amount of mortgage you can access is tied to how much income you earn. So typically times 4. So you buy your first home, and I hear people talk about investment property a lot. So if that income has been tied to buying the first home, how can you now get the second home if that income is already tied to that mortgage? So it gets a bit confusing for me. I would just like a bit of clarification. Thank you.
All right, so I'm just going to tackle the second question. So at the time of purchase, it depends on how much you put down as down payment, right? Typically, as new as you are to Canada, you can actually, in 2 months, you can actually start the process. Actually, you can start the process now, but in 2 months, you can actually be ready to buy your first property, right? It depends on how much you're making at the time you're looking to buy the next property, because it would typically take time for you to save to buy the next property. Another thing that you can do as a client is we can actually refinance your current property, right, after a while. So you wait, your property has gained value, we refinance, pull out equity from your current property, and put it as a down payment on the next investment property. But it has to be 20% of the value of the property. At that time, your income has to be enough to carry the 2 properties. Because now, your investment property is going to be rented out, right? So the rent in that property will be added to your income. So like in case, yes, so will be added to your income. Yeah. So I'm still going to go to the B side. On the B side, you can go up to 100%, right? You can go up to 100, which is, basically adding more. You qualify for more. Yeah. So, yeah, because they have exceptions too on the A side. Like I deal with A lenders too, so I know that they're flexible, right? Typically they'll say 50%, but they will go up to 70, 80, even 90% in some cases, right? So when you're buying the next property, you have to qualify somehow. If you don't qualify on the A side again, you can qualify on the B side. If you look at the amount of rent, if the rent is going to cover your mortgage, and you have to go on the B side, why not, right?
So, prior to that, so with that income that he said from the rental property, we could actually look into it off the record.
Well, no, actually, it could be on the record when you look at
Okay.
it. People usually, they purchase a property, like I said earlier, they go in a smaller home,
Yeah.
get going, build it, and then suddenly your wife came new to Canada, she suddenly gets a job, dream job that she wanted, and you got your dream job. Now you got two income. You having a smaller home, you're planning to have 3 more kids. So you need a bigger home. You can purchase your bigger home. Your existing one, you don't need to sell. A lot of people don't want to sell it because it's a smaller home. They can rent it out, make enough money off of it because they got a better rental, and then move on to the new home. So we can make that as a rental, and then use 80% of that rental income to add it to your income to be purchasing the new one. That's what it qualifies. So every time you purchase a home or an investment, we have to look at what are you doing, because a lot of people say I want to buy a home for an investment, but which one is it going to be an investment? That's the $1 million question.
And also, you could actually buy as much as you want. So, meaning that even with that 80%, which is the second home, then if you're buying for another, another investment property, I've seen a lot of people that owns almost 9 properties. And this people, yeah, and guess what? The income is like probably 150 or maybe 100. So, it's possible.
Yeah, it's a valid point. I'm glad that that slide has come up. It's a valid question. The point is, the principle is basically the fact that you don't have to stay around Milton, stay in Milton. So I did highlight Oshawa, for example, on this chart. I missed out Barry for sure, but there are places to look at as well, the interesting about Oshawa right now is because of the economy. There's this car plant that the GM plant is shut down. The economy, I do expect price. I think it's going to impact price of houses. I think so. So it's a good opportunity as well to look for homes in. But one thing I've observed though is that the homes in this area on the west side are cheaper than the homes. I think the transport system on this other side is much more mature than the transportation system on the west side. That's my own observation. Yeah.
The taxes are much cheaper here than Oshawa, Pickering, E-tax.
The land transfer tax, yeah. Property tax, sorry. Property tax. Then there's this land transfer tax. I think you pay double or something. That's in Toronto, for example.
All right.
Okay.
I think the other thing that, why people, want to stay in Milton, Brampton, could be because of jobs too. Once you are moving out of the GT area, it becomes a bit difficult depending on, the profession that you belong to. So I think that might be one of the reasons that is driving that too.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. So we really appreciate you taking our time to come speak with us. I'm sure we've all learned something. I've learned many new things, and I hope that God will help us to be able to actualize our dreams in Jesus' name. So maybe we should just rise up. We'll just have a short prayer, and then we'll go. Father, we thank you. We give you all the praise for the gift of life. We thank you for bringing us together to learn. We ask for your grace that, Lord, you help us to be able to build our own homes, to have our own homes. You give us the power to make wealth, Lord, to actualize our dreams in the mighty name of Jesus. I pray for our panelists also that, Lord, in their place of business, you're going to prosper them and make them to grow in the name of Jesus. Father, we thank you again. In Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Amen. Thank you again.
Nice to see you. I hope well. Absolutely.
Okay, Jide.
Yeah.
Okay. That's my card.
Not a problem.
All right, brother.
again.
All right, nice to meet you.
You too.
Good job.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Eze means chief, right?
Yeah.
Eze, Miss G.
Eze means chief, so I'm calling you chief.
Oh,
Do
really?
you know my pastor?
No, I have.
Okay, I need to introduce you to my pastor.
All right, I'll
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your.
Take another picture, including Sean and
Okay, okay, sure. Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Emma Boy. I think you introduce you. So this is my pastor.
Hello, Pastor. Nice to meet you.
Pastor Ademidu. And this is Pastor Oludele.
Okay, nice to meet you, sir. My colleague.
This is Andrew, is the realtor.
How are you, sir? Nice to meet you, sir.
Thank you. I want to give you a challenge.
And that's email, right? Email.
Yes, a financial planner.
Can I introduce you to the other people too?
okay.
Just one sec. Jane, this is my pastor, Pastor. Pastor. This is my main pastor, Pastor Ademidu. This is barista lawyer Akoniwaju Adajo. Pastor Oladejo. Pastor Ademidu.
Yeah.
Sean,
Yeah, how you doing?
nice to meet
That's
you.
my
Pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for. Hope all the.
Where's my pastor? Oh my God. Brother Akin. Hey, why join? No, I was calling you. I wanted him to call you. Let's stick together. My pastor Mrs. is coming. Hold on.